Okay. And okay, and the blade of Bowie knives or old Bowie knives is these carbon blades, right? These were not made of other materials or steel, right?
Not that I know of. Mostly just the steel at the time. You know, just anything they could use. The same kind of steel that was used with any of the swords that they were using, sabers, anything like that at the time. There wasn't anything real specific of the type of steel used. Basically, just they just didn't make anything out of straight iron, because it would basically just kind of snap or it would bend. But mostly it would just be no different from any other type of knife made or any kind of sword steel at that time.
And the scabbard they used, did they use any specific scabbard, or was it just?
Not really. These guys, you got to understand, like the people who were using Bowie knives at the time, they didn't fantasize, or they didn't what's the word, like they didn't glorify like their sheaths. They were just made out of skins, they were made out of hide, they were made out of leather. They just put something together just so they can keep it on the belt. You know what I mean? Some people, like some of the English and stuff, would probably make something a little bit more elaborate with that. And some of the Spanish made some elaborate, some designed work, with leather and adding some metal and such to it, kind of like with the handles. Some of the knives became just pieces of art. And if they were going to make a piece of art type blade, they would make the sheath as well, kind of like similar to it. So, well, for the most part, for the most frontiersmen, they didn't really care. They were just like, I need a knife. I need something that works. I just need something that in leather. I just need something to keep it on my side. So a lot of it really wasn't a big deal to them, just as long as they had something.
Okay, Thayne, excellent. And then do we have a classification? Okay, I'm not talking about also later versions of Bowie knife. Do we have a classification made by any scholar or any colleague who classified Bowie knives? Also later Bowie knives.
Like classified it as?
Different, are they different categories, or we cannot really say that?
Well, a little bit. So like, mostly you got to understand when after the sandbar duel and the big knife took off, people just started saying, oh, look, like any big knife is a Bowie knife. So they didn't really know. They just called it a Bowie knife. At the time, there really wasn't a name for big knives. Everybody just kind of carried a knife, a big knife. They either carried a boot knife, they carried some kind of big knife or hunting knife. But after Bowie made it famous, or the Englishman George made it famous, they just called any big knife a Bowie knife. It wasn't really like there was any kind of real classification. But there was some where in Texas is the one state where they actually started to make the clip point basically standard in all of their big Bowie knives. And they were always the ones that kind of started off a little thin and then got a little bigger, and then they have the big, wide blade in the belly, and then basically they would have that curved clip point. So in a way, yes, that's how I think Texas is where the first place where they started to classify different types of buoys, because they really wanted to have a look to it. Like we'll use this one, for example, or actually, let me show you a live blade version. Now this is a cold steel Notches buoy. Okay, this is live. This is similar. See how it has a deep clip point, and then it has a belly to it a little bit, and then it has just a normal cross here. Similar to a Texas design, but the Texas design would start like more thin and then get a little wider, you see? And then basically then it would have a deep clip point. And it'd actually have a more of like a short clip point. This one has a longer one. So you'd see like a more short clip point. That one was identified as a Texas buoy. Now, this design is basically off of what they call the Muso design. It was a design where you could kind of show you, like I'll show you a picture here of what the Muso one was. If you can see here, that is the famous Muso one. And you can see it has like a back clip, it has like a brass spine to it, but it has like a very, S-guard, and then basically you can see it has like a small handle, but it's very similar. See how like the clip point is kind of the same as almost this. Let me see.
Yes, it is.
Similar, right? So that is the Musa buoy. That's a famous buoy, that design. Now that design came, that was during like the Civil War time, and people were using that back in the 1800s. And after like 1840 and 1850s, where they started to add like the brass to the spine and such. We could go into the anatomy of this blade here in a second, but that was kind of a classified. So you got some classes, like the Muso design was a class. The Texas design was a class. So yes, it did start taking off. And then the Sheffield design. The Sheffield design is more like this, where it's not fat at all. It's basically literally just all one, and then it kind of comes to a clip point. The Sheffield the English made like these straighter, more straight buoys with like just a belly on it.
Yeah.
So.
Beautiful. Could you let's go and describe the life blade. You just said you're going to describe different parts and anatomy of it. Could you please do that for us, please?
Absolutely. So let's go back to this real quick, and then I'll show you another one. The anatomy of the buoy, it's pretty interesting. So basically, okay, we have different types of guards, right? So we have just a straight guard here. Now also, you can also see that a lot of these Bowie knives have different types of handles, okay? This is what we consider to be kind of like a coffin grip. So you have here, and then it kind of comes wide, you know how like a coffin had that shape to it? So they would have this as a wide. Now, for that reason, it's basically so you can actually kind of choke up on it if you wanted to, or the whole point was you had a wider base, so if you had to, you can choke back on it more, and then basically you have something to grab. Yeah. Now, the reason for that is because it gives you about a couple more inches of range. So if I had to fight somebody, I could get a few more inches of range out of it. See that? Also, what that does is, you mind if I stand up? Or
yeah, of course, please, by all means.
So from this angle here, right, what they do is, I'll go into some of the techniques with the knife, is they would do a thing called a back cut. And that's how they use the clip point. So if I choke back on this, I'm making kind of like a ball here at the inside of my palm, so then I have more articulation with my wrist.
Yeah.
So basically, if I had to fight with it and I was coming and I had to do a back cut, I can turn this, and then also I can articulate my wrist and use the point of the sharp back end point to injure my opponent or to cut better. So it makes a faster motion.
Yeah.
So I'm facilitating a faster cut with it kind of choked back. But also what they do is they also do long range. If I had to thrust with this, I could easily just let the knife come out, and basically I would basically just catch it real fast to gain a few more inches so I can stab my opponent. So that would be the coffin grip. Now, from the up here, we have the spine, okay, the back part. The spine is actually quite thick. Yeah. You can see here, it's very, very thick. Yeah. So basically what they do is, this is for a couple reasons, right? So a wilderness reason would be to baton with. So if I had to cut wood, right? So basically I'd put this on a log and then basically use a hammer or another stick to basically cut wood. So it had to be nice and thick. This is also for defense. So basically what happened is there's certain techniques where I would actually defend with the back part of my knife. Yeah. So you wanted it nice and thick, so I can basically do parries with it. I can parry downward, I could parry upward, I could do a back cut parry with it and come back. So this is basically for defense. But basically it's just always, and it also adds enough thickness to it. So if I have to chop wood, or if I have to bury this into somebody better, you know, like it adds enough weight to where if I have to parry something, then I can parry something heavy, maybe like a big stick or another sword, it would help add the mass to it so I can parry better. So there's a lot of reasons for that. And of course, you know, for this one, we have the clip edge, back clip. This one is a sharpened back clip. It's very sharp. Basically, of course, you know, when you have this point here, basically it's for better thrusting against people's armor. Yeah. Nice point here. And I'll go over like back cutting and stuff, but this is also great for doing back cuts and doing quick sniping attacks with the knife. And then of course, We have the belly, the true edge. Basically, this varies. Some are very straight, some are more curved. Sometimes you see some Bowie knives with a recurve, you know, where it comes down and then it has a really deep belly.
Okay.
Now, there's all reasons for that, for tactical reasons, but basically we'll get into that. But basically, this is kind of your perfect design of a Bowie knife. Now, let me show you a different variation to another knife here,
Yeah.
which is called the Hell's Bell. And this knife is a little different because now if you see here, it is definitely more straight. See, it's almost, this is more of a thrusting one. A lot of different Bowie knives are very, very different. Like this one is made for more thrusting than it is for actually chopping into people or cutting people. It does have a very sharp blade, but if you look, the point is extremely sharp. And this does also have a back sharpened back clip point. Let me see if I can get that in there, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, the point with this is a couple things. See, this one looks a little different because it has a curved cross.
Yeah.
And this does have a coffin grip as well. So basically it just has the coffin grip. So what we do here is you can choke back on it. But the thing that I love about this knife is made for more dueling. This is a fighting knife, okay? The reason for that is because for one, it's lighter. It's a lot less mass to it, but it also has extremely good point for thrusting. The other point of this is it has a couple things. It has the Spanish notch. See the circle here? They have the Spanish notch, and they also have the curved cross for catching weapons.
What is the reason for having a Spanish notch?
Okay, the Spanish notch, there's a lot of debate about it. Okay, so basically a lot of people put the Spanish notch in. Oh, they're saying that it could be for design, for just like a nice little section, like an old Bowie. Sometimes you just have like this little notch there. And a lot of times that was actually more of a design. And then some people decided that possibly it can actually catch a knife. So I'm not going to use this for them. Let me show you. I have a knife here with another Spanish notch. It's a trainer. So I got this trainer here, so it has a Spanish notch, right? You can do it for, and one of my old teachers, James Keating, talks about when you bring the knives close together, and you guys the Bowie knives are just big enough where you can actually use them as swords, right? I can parry with these. I can actually fight and duel with them. When they bring them together, then if you slide down the blade, it would catch inside, like so. And then from that point on, now I can manipulate their weapon. So basically what happens is if I was dueling and I catch it and I do a roll here and I slide up the blade and it catches into the Spanish notch, then I can actually turn it. And now I have control of their weapon and I can disarm from there and then come back and get them. Or I can basically take the weapon here, catch it, and then bring my other hand in and then basically control and manipulate and take away and then come back for a thrust. So it's the catch. It's like a blade catcher. But it's hard to do, right? I mean, you have to come here and then you have to get the right angle and you have to turn up into it. And then it has to catch that blade. So that's not easy to do, right? So that means you have to practice and you have to really know how to fence. And you got to practice with the knife. You have to make an articulation with your wrist in order to catch it. And that's hard to do, right? Back in the day, people aren't, they're clanging steel, there's steel moving everywhere, there's hands moving, and you may not be able to catch it. You'll have to like catch off the flat here, and then you'll have to sink it in order to catch it, in order to do a disarm. So that's where the Spanish notch kind of is supposed to be used. Yeah. So, but there's really no books on it. They don't really talk about it. That's just what some people use it for. And it goes to the same with the curved cross here. It's the same thing. If I come here, I can latch this in and then turn my wrist, and then basically I have it locked. And at that point, then what I do is I can bring my other hand and then I can manipulate it out of the hand and then shove it in. Or I can completely disarm.
Thayne, it reminds me of Nepalese kukuri. They have this notch as well.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Oh,
Nepalese
that's cool.
kukuri. Yeah.
With the notch here?
Yeah, yeah, they do. All of them do. But the notch in there, I mean, there are also different opinions. Most of it, they say, is because of symbolic reason. No, well, got big discussions on that. But as you know, they're
Yeah.
curved, like this. So inside, the edge is inside, right? Like a yatagan. And they always have that. But in the middle, mostly, they have a tongue, right? Like a tongue. It looks like a tongue. It's not a tongue. It's a notch.
Oh,
and
a tongue part that comes out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see.
yeah. Mostly, a small one. Not all of them, but mostly they have that.
Was that because like the blade would catch the tongue and then get stuck in the notch?
I don't. No one really knows about that. But I'm going to interview some of these Nepalese because they still make kukuris there. I'm going to interview him because it's, then there are lots of opinions of collectors outside, but it's better to go to the source and ask those guys,
Right.
why they have it, right?
And that's the same with the Spanish notch here. People thought it was just a cool design, like, oh, it's a neat little thing I could put in here. But then people started realizing that I've done a lot of sparring with knife. I find sparring to be a lot of fun and movement. And I've actually done some practice with these, and I've noticed that if you hit the right angle, it literally just catches right in there. It just catches, and you're like, oh, wow. And then I can just do a disarm from there, and I come back and get them. So I have put it to practice. And that's the one thing that I think is kind of unique about my skill set is I have the knowledge of buoys, but I also spar with them. And I actually put this to use when I teach that.
It makes a big difference. I mean,
huge.
Huge difference. I mean, of course, we need both communities, specifically as far as antiques are concerned. We need collector community, but we also need practitioners. It's like, you know that you come from Japanese swords. Many Japanese sword makers always say, and they are in constant contact with Kenjutsu and Iaijutsu practitioners because they need constant feedback. That's what, many collectors in the West do not know, that is constant feedback in Japan is still there. Is still there, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because
because the Japanese, even the new blades, which are made, as Japanese, they are so expensive. But many collectors in the West don't know that the constant feedback is still there, right? So it is extremely important. So I fully agree with you. I mean, not everyone needs to practice martial arts, but these, combination or not exchange of information should be there, right?
Absolutely. You have to. If you really want to understand this art and you are the weapon, you have to do both. You got to study. You got to know where it comes from. You got to see how they did it or why they did it this way. And then you got to put it to use. You got to play with it. You have to do it. And I do this a lot. Like when I teach my buoy classes, I teach the basics and I teach the motions. And then we get out the knives and we get out plastic like these cold steel, like rubber knives, and we practice with them. And then we do actually fast, hard sparring. And then sometimes when I use these aluminum ones, we go really slow. We do kind of medium speed, and we wear gear and armor, and we practice the actual techniques with actual steel or metal. And I found out that the Spanish notch actually does work sometimes. Depends on your angle. And I can catch with the blade catchers here. And that makes a huge difference. You just have to. And from the one, it's just amazingly fun to do, even though it's impractical. I mean, practicing with these is like practicing with sword. We don't carry swords out in the real world, really.
Of course.
It's just because we do it for historical reasons and we do it for fun reasons. And Bowie knife sparring and working the Bowie knife is very similar to boxing. And basically, it's a great workout. Basically, because with the motions and stuff, you move you have to move. You have to be able to move. If you're going to be a knife fighter, or a knife defense expert, you can't just stand there and let your hand move. You have to move the body, and you have to move like a boxer. You have to bob your head. You got to weave. You have to be able to move in different angles like that. In order to survive. And you learn that. Like when I teach my more advanced students, when we spar, you learn that. And you're breathing hard and you're just sweating like crazy. And it's like a real box. You get the box, you're in the, you're boxing. you learn some stuff. You know, you're really surprised about how it works.
Excuse me, Thayne, I didn't want to hijack it. You were talking about the different types of Bowie knives. Go ahead, please, with that subject.
Yeah. Basically, again, you know, different knife. Going back to this, you know, this is more of a fighting knife. This one has the curved cross, the Spanish notch, and it's more of a thrusting type of knife, right? So there's that one. Going back to my notches, which is larger by far. So if I bring both out, gotta be careful here. I mean, look at the difference. One's much wider. One's, you know, got a thicker belly. This one has more straight. It almost looks like an Arkansas toothpick. Yeah. Look at here. This one has no cross. This one here does. Yeah. So, you know, you can do some catching. So there's definitely some differences between these two. I also have another one here, what we call a Laredo. And this one here is one of my favorites. This is also live. This one here is a wider blade, has more of a belly, but it also has extremely long back cut. And that one's very sharp as well. Yeah. And this one has a great balance to it. I love the balance of this. And they also come with another coffin grip. This one here basically moves so very nice, and it's basically kind of a basic knife. You know, it doesn't have the brass on the spine, but it does have a thick spine on it. So I can still back cut with it and come back. This one here is, I wish it had more of a curved cross on it, but this one has a slightly different variant of the type of blade. So it's a little wider. And of course, the clip point almost looks more like a Mexican buoy. So it has kind of more of a belly on it than the, you know, this one here.
No, it does, yeah.
See a little bit. This one, again, certain Bowie knives are all a little bit different. So like this one here is more of a thrusting one. This one can thrust and make some really deep cuts with it. So there's some differences there. But yeah, so those are some of the live ones I have. Like, let me show you one here, a Mexican buoy.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me. Now this one looks a little different, and you're going to see why. Like a Mexican buoy, the Mexican, let me see here. As you can see here, this one has extremely long back cut, and their blade is more, see how it has a recurve there a little bit?
Yeah.
They have a recurve, and then they also have a belly to it, but it also has a more of an acute point to it. And they actually kind of had some, I don't know if it's showing there, I apologize.
Yeah, it's like dented.
Yeah. So you can see the difference there. It has a way more of a point to it, but it also can chop. And the Mexicans made some really cool designed Bowie knives. And they also kind of like design the back spine, and they like to add a little S. And if you see that handle there, that's not, it's kind of a curved handle. There's a lot of curved handles, but it's still wide at the base for you to grab the back. So
beautiful.
Mexican buoys are very, very cool looking. So
yeah, it does. It looks, the handle looks like an Ottoman Kilic handle somehow, smaller.
Oh, it does. Yeah. It really does. It has like a very Turkish or very, you know, Middle Eastern type look to it.
Yeah.
And again, that's probably because of like a lot of the you know, European, Spanish, you know, influence, that kind of thing. So you can see, like again, Mexico makes some really great knives. Really great. They like to design their knives a little bit more, but they had more of an acute point. And I really love a Mexican buoy. Actually, I'm trying to get a hold of a real authentic one to add to my collection, but. So yeah, there is variations. Again, you know, more straight bladed, you know, no belly. Then you see some with massive bellies to them, you know, like the Muso, again, basically there. So keep in mind though, they do different things. Okay. Like if you're talking in a tactical standpoint, I don't know if you want to go into that real quick, but
yes, please. Absolutely.
Like, let's use this as an example, right? I'll just kind of use this as more of a big bellied one. So what happens is, I'm going to
please,
Bob.
Thank you.
So I got Bob here. So when you have a thicker Bowie knife, okay, what that means is you could do certain techniques from that better than other knives, okay? I'm going to go over two unique aspects of the Bowie knife that you can't really do with any other knives, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The one here that works best is called a snap cut. Now, I know that a lot of different arts have snapping motion with the knife, but with the Bowie knife, if you have something with a big belly that has a little bit more weight to it, and if I snap forward, I'm making a very devastating chopping cut really quick. So basically what happens is, I'll just use Bob as an example. This does have some weight to it. With a snap cut, what you do is all you're doing is I'm thrusting forward and letting the momentum come, let the speed bring the knife upward. And then all I'm doing is I'm snapping forward. So basically I just thrust, boom, and come forward. And what that's doing is I'm slashing right into the face. It's like a chop, real quick chop to the head, and then pulling back immediately. So there's a story where I believe his name was Cassius Clay. Basically, he was the ambassador to Russia during the Civil War. He was a Bowie knife fighter. He basically said that he ended a person, he made a quick thrusting motion that turned into a snap. And he said that because of the momentum and the speed and the weight of the belly, he said it buried so deep into his skull that he had a hard time pulling it out. Because you see what I mean when I'm doing this is I'm making a thrusting action, then it comes up, and then I make a whipping action, snap cut downward. So that causes a lot more trauma to the person. So if this was against like a piece of wood, you could feel what can make a whacking action, which is really quick. So if I was up here like this, I can snap cut somebody. I could snap cut their hand. Normally what you do is you would snap cut a person's wrist, or if they had a weapon in hand, I would snap cut their thumb and it would come right off. I could basically snap cut almost the hand right off. I could bury this into someone's skull and then come back. So it's a super quick action. So that's the cool thing about a Bowie is, and even if I miss, right, or if I don't get the snap, it's still a thrust. So basically, if I don't get this, if I miss cutting him, I'll just stab him instead. So it still, works that way.
Yeah.
One other aspect is this is also good for a disarm. So imagine basically the Bob here has a knife out in front of me, and I could do this. I could snap cut the weapon right out of his hand. Bam, just hit it real fast. And then what that does is, as soon as I get this knockdown, then I could turn it into a thrust immediately.
Yeah.
So it does two things. I could disarm with it, snap cut, and then immediately turn it into a thrust and end my fight. Or I could just come in really quick and do like a jab, bam, and just snap cut. So snap cut can be extremely dangerous with a Bowie knife. So it has a lot of applications. I could snap cut straight ahead. I could snap cut sideways.
Oh.
Bam, and just kind of take an eye. If I wanted to end the fight quickly, boom, I might take his eye. Or if I wanted to just teach this guy a lesson, I might just take his ear off. I might just chop his ear off. Bam, just hit him real quick. You know what I mean? You could
can you do snap cut other way around as well? Like this? Yeah.
You can. But like say if I was here, right, here's a normal snap cut, boom, right? Snap cut forward. I could do this way, right?
Yes.
If I did it this way, it's a little bit hard, it's a little bit easier for my opponent to see it.
Yes.
Because I'm making making more of a turn, which is very seeable. So yes, I could do it, but I would have to add footwork to it. I'd have to kind of pivot off to do it. So you can do it that way. I could also snap cut upward, boom, like so, almost like a back cut, which will definitely catch the hands, or I could catch the head or whatever, the throat. But yeah, I could snap cut someone's throat. I might be able to parry, bam, and then come back and just slice his jug. I could just hit him right across the face.
Yeah.
So that was actually a thing in New Orleans. A lot of people, because of all the duels, They were missing eyes. They had bad scars. They would actually miss their entire ear would come off. Some people literally lost all their nose. Basically, going back to Cassius Marcellus Clay, he said he fought a duel with a guy, and after what happened was he did a snap cut, which literally split his nose and took his nose completely off, and he snap cut him again, and his ear was basically hanging off, and the guy quit. So he was completely ugly and disfigured for the rest of his life.
Talking about frontier lifestyle, huh?
Frontier lifestyle. A lot of people didn't die in duels, right? You know, a lot of did, but a lot of times they would give up. They take a hit, go, oh crap, I'm done. All right, cool. Honor satisfied. Good.